Hi, folks. Afternoon to you. Today's Thursday. Got yesterday's episode posted this morning. Went off without a hitch. Seemed to have kind of gotten into a groove on transferring the videos off of my phone over to the desktop, and then uploading to YouTube platform from there. Seems to be less issues, at least. I'm not ready to say uh, that there aren't any issues, but less to be sure. A couple of updates for you today. Had um, got a message from the guest down in Perdido Key today. Said that they had experienced some internet connectivity issues. With some dropped video calls and stuff for work. Um, they were trying to get some work done. One of the beauties of this StayFi platform that we've got here is it's got uptime history on the internet connectivity. So I can go back and see, you know, if there were any periods of downtime on the internet, at least as far as the hub is concerned, getting back to, the internet service provider and stuff. So I went back and I looked to see whether or not we had any verifiable internet downtime, and wasn't able to find any periods of, poor connectivity. So I don't know if we've got another firmware issue with the internet itself, that we're going to have to troubleshoot. I haven't had an opportunity to um, test out the Wi-Fi connectivity with that new StayFi bridge at the property myself over an extended period of time. So I kind of have to just take the guess word for it, despite the green light on all the connectivity history for the bridge itself, and we'll just kind of have to troubleshoot that some as we go. I did end up, curiously enough, I did end up getting a notification this afternoon that there was a period of downtime there. Um, but like I said, that was the first I'd seen of that type of an issue there. So um, we just have to be one of those things that we diagnose and do the best we can to get things fixed as quickly as we can when it comes up. Um, a little update for everybody on the Truvi damage deposit stuff. I had mentioned we had some stuff that we had to claim um, after a stay in Tuscaloosa, and Truvi had reached out to us for some additional documentation on photos. They asked for time-stamped photos of the damage after the guest checked out. Okay, not a big deal. Um, I did have to get the photos directly from the cleaner, um, and then figure out the metadata so that I could add um, the timestamps and stuff to the photos manually. Um, it was a pretty laborious task, and so I actually have started to research um, some additional software vendors that will allow us to do that more seamlessly. I just kind of have to figure out what the best options are, and how we can kind of integrate it into our processes that we're already using with the existing cleaning teams that we have. Obviously, we don't want to create a bunch of extra work, above and beyond what we already have them doing, which is you know they do a great job with all that anyways. I don't really want to put a bunch of stuff on the plates unnecessarily, but ultimately I do have to be able to provide the documentation that Truvi requires in order to get a claim paid. And it's not really a gripe necessarily for Truvi. I don't feel like their system is unique in that regard, on what all is required to prove that the damage uh, was for the guest that you know we're submitting the claim against. So we're kind of working through that. Had to spend some extra time making sure the timestamps got onto all the photos. That was a request they had. But the follow up, they actually sent us a follow up this morning and were asking for a more detailed breakdown of the extra cleaning and stuff that we were charged. And I pushed back on them on that. I basically told them, look, this is a third party invoice. The the cleaner is a 1099 subcontractor. Um, they're not my employee. I don't have any control over um, what the cleaner charges in terms of extra cleaning for guest cause damages. Um, and nor should I have to. They don't have to justify it to me, and I shouldn't have to justify it to Truvi. You know, and I kind of went into there are some very um, specific criteria that the IRS uses, these are their rules; they're not my rules. That the IRS uses to determine whether or not someone is in fact a subcontractor or an employee. And you can there's a form that you can submit to the IRS um, to have them make a determination. It's a questionnaire basically, but it takes a bunch of time. It takes like 4 or 6 months once you submit the questionnaire over to the IRS to get a determination back from them, an official determination on whether or not the person that you've submitted the application or questionnaire for is in fact a subcontractor or an employee. Um, so, generally speaking, they have some posted guidance on how to determine whether somebody's an employee or a subcontractor. And based off of the arrangements that we have with our cleaning crews, they're undoubtedly 1099 subcontractors. So, it's not there's not really a question of that as of today. If, on the other hand, I get into um, situations where with people like Truvi where I have to, you know, get accountability and times and cleaning times and all this other kind of stuff. All of a sudden, the IRS might start asking a bunch of questions and say and come to the conclusion that no, this person that you've designated as a subcontractor is in fact your employee. And the pitfall of that is they can once they get reclassified as an employee, all of a sudden they're subject to unemployment taxes, tax withholdings, and remittance and payroll taxes and all sorts of other stuff that we're just I mean we're not going to do that. Especially given that when you pay a subcontractor, you generally pay a higher rate than you would if they were an employee. To have a subcontractor that you have a set rate agreed with for a project or a specific clean or whatever the case may be, to then all of a sudden have that pay reclassified as W-2 wages, um, it becomes problematic. So we've pushed back on that with them, and hopefully we can kind of get to the light at the end of the tunnel and get this thing reimbursed. The fact of the matter is, if this doesn't go well, we're probably going to discontinue using Truvi if we can't get all this stuff sorted out, because these are big issues and they have very large implications to um, profitability and operating expenses and all that kind of stuff for us as a business. So we really don't have any flexibility when it comes to having somebody get designated as an employee simply because another vendor we work with requires additional documentation. That's not going to work for us. So I was kind of chatting back. It's a back and forth. It's a slow back and forth process. You know, they make a comment and ask for additional information. I get them the additional information, and then they take a couple days to review that, and then come back to me with whatever it is. So, you know, I basically pushed back on the representative that's handling that claim and said, hey, look, you know, you asked for timestamp stuff. We provided the timestamp stuff. We've provided you with a third party invoice that we don't have any control over. You know, we're not making the rules. We're not making the charges here. We're just asking to be reimbursed at face value. Pushed back on that representative a little bit. I said, look, if you can't approve it based off of the documentation that we've provided, you know, I want to talk with, you know, senior supervisor or senior representative, whatever the case may be, um, so that we can get this figured out. Because, like I said, there's big implications in terms of operating expenses on uh, what they're asking us to classify um, for one of our subcontractors that we're just not willing to do. So that's today's update. I'll let y'all know how everything goes as we're kind of researching some of the additional software solutions um, for, you know, kind of documenting uh, status of the property in between turnovers. And you know, that's kind of why we're doing these recordings, right? Is so that y'all can kind of see the journey and follow along with us as we figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. You know, it's all in furtherance of being able to operate a short-term rental business efficiently for ourselves and for our guests. You know, get paid for a waiver with the expectation that, you know, there's not going to be any repercussions up to, you know, the dollar amount that they paid for. And so, you know, that's kind of where we are. That's our opinion on it. And you know, we'll keep you apprised of anything that changes. Appreciate y'all following along. We will catch you in the morning. See ya.